some sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Sunday, June 15th, 2025. And BC ferries, I've got not really an update. Fast ferries from the 90s is in the news a little bit, kind of, and only because the ferries in BC are being purchased out of China instead of BC, even though Team Canada and all the rest. And it's funny, and there's a whole long history of wasting money in British Columbia on ferries and politicians over-promising and under-delivering, and, well, why not go through the memories of all of that? No King's protest kind of fizzles. We'll look at that at the end of the show because not much happened, really not much. I didn't have too much footage. There's some hot pockets here and there, but I think the police officers and the strong rhetoric from the politicians saying, we're not messing around, we're going to throw your ass in jail if you do this, maybe cooled some people's jets a little bit. We'll see. But it wasn't nearly as big a deal. The military parade, it was interesting. People saying happy birthday to Donald Trump. And he was there swearing in new soldiers and saying, good luck, have a nice life, and so on and so forth. So it seemed kind of usual fare for a big 250th birthday party. And I didn't think there was too much strange about it. So some people were saying it makes the United States look weak. Maybe. What do you think? Trump says the United States didn't have anything at all to do with the Iranian strike yesterday, with the Iranian strike by Israel. And so that's interesting to watch, and we'll see what's going on. They've got some color on that. Again, closer to the end of the show today. Conflicting stories about Iran and Israel. Some people are saying the Iranian government is fleeing Iran and running to Russia. Maybe true. I don't know. And other people are saying that Iran was able to breach the Iron Dome, and the Iron Dome has collapsed, and a whole bunch of missiles, hypersonic missiles, and all sorts of other kinds of missiles made it into center of Israel. And so there's all sorts of things like that happening as well. So again, at the end of the show, I'll show you all that. But it seems there's weird stuff about everything, right, these days. And today's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day, everybody. I've got steak prices from Australia. The steaks are in Canada, but they're from Australia, and they're cheap, super cheap, on sale. I don't know how we're getting cheap steaks for Father's Day from Australia, but Canadian beef is still super expensive. So that's weird, right? So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We've got to start with the invasion ongoing. And why? Because I think that I don't know if Guelph has Canada Day this year. I don't know if we're doing fireworks for Canada Day. Usually the Rotary Club does it, but they pulled out last year 6 weeks prior, and the city said, no, we can't actually do a Canada Day celebration. We don't have any time to organize it. And they're doing a multicultural festival, and they did the first multicultural festival, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, 15 years ago maybe, and we went, and it was terrible. There was like bank booths and a water booth, and this is just before I realized what was going on, right? And it wasn't very good. And I thought, like, why are we wasting money on this? And I realize now it's the timing, right? Like, oh, here's your festival of things. We'll do that mid-June, and we'll forget about Canada Day. And I'm worried that nobody's going to spend any money on Canada Day this year. It's all about multiculturalism, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not good, because what's happening is, well, we're being replaced, and it's not good. I don't like that. That's a big problem for, me and my kids and grandkids, who I expected to be able to inherit this land, but no, right? Not really. And by inherit this land, I mean, be able to go buy a house, be able to get a job, raise a family without having to go into, soul crushing debt, et cetera, et cetera. No, right? That's not going to happen. There was a time when that happened, and now is not it, right? And so that's weird. That's really, really weird. And so how long do people tolerate that knowledge? And we're watching what's happening in Europe. We're watching what's happening in the United Kingdom. We're watching what's happening in the broader West. And, well, if we don't talk about it, we can't identify the real problems here and where it's okay and where it's not okay, right? Donald Trump seems to think some things are okay. He's made a deal with China where Chinese students are going to still get access to the United States. He's saying H-1B visas are good. Some people say that's not a good idea, right? Canada's immigration system is completely broken, I think, in the same way the United Kingdom's is completely broken. And the United States is not far behind, it seems. And again, no political will to stop this runaway train. It's absolutely crazy. So here's Radio Genoa, and she says, I think it's a she, if a woman has to pass with a stroller in Paris, she cannot because streets are occupied by Muslims praying to Allah. This is what an Islamic invasion looks like. This is in France, and this is happening in Canada too. If you're walking down the street, maybe in Toronto, maybe in Montreal, I showed you yesterday, a Montreal church started blasting the bells and showing people, or not showing people, but competing with the Islamic prayer going on out front. So here's Paris, France. Here we go.
اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك. Okay,
that's enough of that, right? So wild, right? If you're trying to get through there and you're just trying to get to a baguette store or something like that, bakery, boulanger, who knows, right? You'd have to wait, or you'd have to go around or something. It doesn't seem like they're too interested in moving. Here's this guy, and I don't know what his name is because I can't read it, Ahmed Dish. And he says, France has finally mapped what the United Arab Emirate dismantled years ago, the Muslim Brotherhood's deep, structured, and ideological presence across Europe. This isn't theory, it's fact, finance, and infiltration. Here's the breakdown in a thread. As the influence collapsed in the Middle East, the Muslim Brotherhood has rebranded in the West, no longer loud, no longer obvious, but deeply embedded in schools, NGOs, mosques, and think tanks. France's 2025 report exposes it in full. And he says, in France, the Brotherhood operates through a civil and education front. Muslims in Musulmans de France has got 139 mosques, 280 associations, 91,000 worshippers weekly, and then it lists other networks. This is their European web, and it lists a whole bunch of 3 more things, all interconnected, quietly shaping policy and identity across the EU. There are prayer rooms in Catholic schools in Toronto, and not for Catholic students to pray, but for Muslim students to pray. There are prayer rooms I was in a high school in Guelph the other day, prayer rooms there too. Strange, because it's a public high school, right? So like, there's no Catholic praying rooms or anything like that. There's no church. There's no religious trimmings at all, except for the prayer rooms for the Muslim kids. Oh, weird, right? Strange. So these things, people have people who work for them in the school boards, in local governments, in provincial governments. And if they're not the elected official, then they're aides to the elected official. They say, oh, well, what about this group of people? What about this underrepresented group of people? What about this group of people that need X, Y, and Z? Prayer rooms. Financing, he says, Islamic Relief, flagged multiple times as one of the Brotherhood's key financial vehicles. Between 2018 and 19 alone, they received public EU funding while promoting Muslim Brotherhood-linked projects. Ideology, it's not faith, it's strategy. Political Islam, wrapped in moderation. Double discourse, peaceful in French, radical in Arabic. I think so. I think that might be happening in Canada too. Cercle resistant. No, I'm saying that terribly wrong. I'm sorry. Secret oath-based structure at the core. Yeah, I think we see that too. Recruitment is not an option. It's engineered. Halakas in private homes, loyalty pledges after vetting, indoctrination via social education, religious pipelines. This is a covert system, not spontaneous belief. Key operatives named, and he's got operatives named, each deeply embedded in European Muslim Brotherhood infrastructure. France is late. The UAE was not. In 2013, I don't know which flag this is. What is it? Oh, the UAE flag. In 2013, 94 Muslim Brotherhood affiliates from Al-Isha were arrested. In 2014, the Brotherhood was banned and designated a terrorist group. Counter-influence operations began across Europe years before this report. This isn't a religious debate, it's geopolitical. France is tracing a shadow war. The UAE cut those roots years ago, while Europe maps the network. We dismantled it. France's move is late, yes, but far ahead of those still in denial, like Canada. This is more than security, it's awareness. It's awareness, will, and courage to name the threat. End of the threat. So there you go. So things are going on in France, and people are pointing this out. And in Western countries and in other places, nobody's pointing out what's going on. Everybody's got their eyes closed or saying, oh, that's very racist to notice these things that are happening. National Post is reporting new liberals offer more of the same old attitude on immigration. So we're not getting a reduction in immigration. Pierre Poilievre says Mark Carney is continuing with Trudeau's disastrous immigration policy of uncontrolled population growth. We need lower levels and an end to the abuse of the refugee, international student, and foreign workers programs. And it's interesting because, sure, but that's not the rhetoric he campaigned on, really. He was saying, you know what we've got to do? We've got to have a blue seal to have to make sure that nurses who come here can work in nursing right away. So he wasn't saying we've got to cut down the immigration. He was saying we've got to bring in more nurses. We've got to bring in more people to build the country and things like that. And I mean, I didn't fall for that rhetoric. I wasn't saying, yay, rah, rah, sis, boom, bah. Like, that seems really, really silly to me. Here is Jason Kenney, and he's highlighting how insane and I mean, I can't believe that I agree with Jason Kenney, because what's your game, Jason Kenney? But he's highlighting that Mark Miller's the return on the GDP in the last 10 years has been absolutely terrible. And Mark Miller is saying immigration is the reason our growth per capita has been so good. So here's Mark Miller being asked about what Pierre Poilievre said, which is we need to cut immigration. Here we go.
Mr. Miller, yesterday Mr. Poilievre said there should be severe limits on immigration increases, seemingly referencing the immigration targets he put in place. What do you make of him saying?
As usual, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. It looks like he's flailing. Look, he's entitled to his opinion. And I spent, as you know, I'm not the immigration minister any longer, but the policies that we did put in place did have a lot of consultation behind them. We reduced those numbers in a way that made sense, specifically to address population growth and how it had gotten out of kilter in the last few years. Immigration has been responsible, despite criticisms on GDP per capita, for the large growth of our gross domestic product over the last few years. That's an important thing. It's made our workforce. For the large growth of our domestic GDP for the last few years. How much did the domestic GDP grow in the last few years? In the last 10 years, Canada's lagging the G20. We're at the very, very bottom at 1.4%. This is real GDP per capita growth in the OECD 2015 Q1 to 2024 Q3. And Canada's all the way down at the bottom. We're just ahead of Luxembourg. I think that's Luxembourg. And they're at negative growth. And we're at 1.4%. Mexico has 3.2%. The G7 average is 12%. Where's that? G7 average, 12.6%. Italy is 12.5%. The United States is 18%, 18.2%. Korea's 23%. So Turkey's up there too, almost 40%. So I have questions. What are you talking about, Mr. Miller? So it's very interesting. Jason Kenney doesn't like it. He says unsustainably high immigration levels are largely responsible for the large decline in our per capita gross domestic product over the past few years. This is particularly the case because the Trudeau government flipped Canada's high-skill immigration system on its head, prioritizing low-skilled migration, which drives incomes down while driving up demand for scarce goods and services like housing. So there you go. We haven't had a good result. And the Liberals say, yeah, maybe the reason that we haven't had that good result is immigration. And if they're proud of this, I guess. Greg is saying Khalistanis are welcome to say they want to kill Indian Prime Minister Modi's politics on Parliament Hill, but the trucker convoy wasn't even allowed to set up their speakers on the Hill to ask for our charter rights to be upheld. Turban privilege. So that's interesting, right? They can have very, very aggressive language on Parliament Hill if you're not targeting Canadian politicians, right? Dacey, and I mean, not that the truckers even had aggressive language for the Canadian politicians. The aggressive language was, come and talk to us. What you're doing doesn't make any sense. Like, when you think about it rationally, it doesn't make any sense. This is insane. Come out here and talk to us. And instead of doing that, the government labeled them terrorist insurrectionists and threw a bunch of them in jail. Dacey says children are also carrying edged weapons on Parliament Hill. Everyone almost is carrying weapons. So this is fine. But during the Freedom Convoy, you weren't allowed to carry flagpoles or hockey sticks, right? So, double standard. Absolutely, right? And the invasion is multifaceted, not just Muslim Brotherhood run, and is happening at our government level, and the government is facilitating it. And I think both on the externally, like they're recruiting externally from Canada, they're putting out communications to other countries saying, come to Canada, we'd love to give you free money and housing. And then when people get here, the people in government, the people at all levels of government, and people in housing, all of these people
are primed and told by all of the policies that this is the priority. And so, like, not that you can't see it, but it is embedded into all levels of government and schools and everything. It's absolutely insane. Here's something that's changing a little bit in UK. Basil the Great says Keir Starmer announces a full national inquiry into the grooming gangs. He previously stated an inquiry would be jumping on the bandwagon of the far right. There's nowhere to hide now. Justice is coming. Ooh, I don't know what that's. And the Labour Party will be completely exposed. I don't know about that either. So, like, you know, when Mark Carney came back, and I was kind of saying, came to Canada after being in England, and I was kind of thinking he's not going to come back and run in an election that he might lose. Like, he's coming back because he knows he's going to win this election, and he knows he's going to do what he's been told to do by his globalist masters. And so this reeks of that. I think that what's going to happen is, have you heard of the 9/11 Commission, right? They take a story and then they put their preferred spin on the story, and then they say, this is the official story, and any deviation from this story is alt-right. Any deviation from this story is crazy. You're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you think anything else happened, right? And people bring up, here's a controlled demolition of a building. Here's 9/11. And people say, oh, that's crazy town. This is the official story, and this is what our commission says. And that's that. And so my worry is that as much as people think, yeah, man, we've got them on the run now. They own the courts. They own all of this. They're going to have an official story now that says, it's quite racist to point out that these grooming gangs exist. And so, right, Tommy Robinson is really responsible, really the bad guy here. They'll flip it somehow. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm terribly wrong. But we've got some modern history to back me up. And I think it's a mistake to let these cracked institutions run these things. Holy cow. So I don't know how we fix that. I do know how we fix it, but there's no stomach for that. Nobody wants to overthrow anything at this point in time. And I'm not even advocating for that, but it doesn't seem like there's any political solution. It doesn't seem like our politicians work for us. And so how do you realistically deal with that? Get politicians that do work for you in this system? Good luck. Good luck. I mean, it's very difficult. I think our elections are rigged. Liberal Party says we have the team and the plan to build a better, fairer, more sustainable Canada. And it's not true. If they have a plan, they're not telling us what the plan is. There's no budget. And so claiming they have a plan while not tabling a budget, that's driving some cognitive dissonance, right? On one side, you're saying you have a plan. On the other side, there's no plan. I can't read the plan. There's no plan for me to access. What plan are you talking about? And so this kind of stuff does nothing to bolster my confidence in this government at all. I think that these people don't work for me. I think that these people are lying, and they're doing everything they can to get censorship laws through, to get a situation where they're in control of most of the things, speech online, banking, whether central bank digital currency, digital ID, access to the internet using digital ID, all tying into social credit scores and things like that. I don't trust these people, and it seems like that's what we're going towards. And it seems like most people don't care enough to look because they can't do anything about it. And so they say, well, if it gets bad enough, I guess we'll rise up. I don't know. Look at China, right? How long did it take people to rise up against the Soviet Union? So anyway, these people don't have a plan, but they're telling you they have a plan. But you can't access the plan, and I can't access the plan. Just trust them. They've got a plan. I don't want to listen to Mark Carney, so we're moving on a little bit. Juno News says a Conservative MP, Andrew Lawton, continued his streak of exposing Liberal MPs in the House of Commons for failing to answer basic questions about their own files. And Lawton says the Liberals could make it stop by appointing more competent ministers. Okay, sure. Again, this is a little bit of shadowboxing. The real issue here is the elections are rigged, and we have an illegitimate government. And the Conservatives aren't even dealing with any of that. And that's frustrating. And we've got a situation where the minority, the Conservatives and the Bloc and the NDP could, I think, outvote the Liberals at this point in time. And we could bring down the whole government, and we could go into an election. It would be a rigged election, and we would still have no answers about Chinese traders or any of the real issues that we need to know before going to an election. But it would put a fly in there liberals' ointment. It would stop their forward momentum and kill all the bills that they're trying to push through on paper. But it seems like Poilievre doesn't want to, doesn't care to, and I don't even know at this point in time. I've seen no indication one way or the other. If I've seen that the Bloc is going to give the Liberals something like 6 months or a year to govern to see how they do, and so if the Bloc is supporting the Liberals for a year, then they pass this budget without a budget, right? The whatever the spending means, and that's crazy. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen. They're going to pass this, and it's going to be a poop sandwich, and we're going to have to deal with it, and that's that. And we're not going to have any way to stop it because our politicians don't work for us, unfortunately. American Truckers is talking about how, this is our grab bag of governance, by the way. He's talking about how American streets are dangerous these days, and the reason they're dangerous is because these truckers are not trained, and he's not wrong, man. So here's this guy talking about American roads. This applies to Canadian roads.
Trucking schools out there that are training these people and getting them their CDLs, and y'all are just pushing them through so they can get that license and you can get that check. Can y'all stop? Please, for the love of God, stop. Raise your standards. Spend more time with these guys and gals. Please. Y'all are putting drivers out here who ain't got no business being on the road. Okay? No business whatsoever. I just watched a driver, obviously Middle Eastern, okay? Just got here, barely speaks English. Said he just started driving 3 months ago. He tried to turn his truck around, and he's so unfamiliar with the truck and doesn't realize how wide he has to swing that he got his shit stuck between the building and a giant stack of racks and damn near jackknifed his trailer. That was first off. I had to guide him out of that. I had to tell him where all his safe spots were because he didn't know where they were at on the truck. He's not familiar enough with his truck to know how far he can pull up or how close he's going to get to something. I had to guide him through that. Then he damn near knocked down a whole bunch of other racks because he forgot about his trailer being behind him. And he cut a turn too sharp. Then, when he was trying to get backed into a door, he couldn't. I sat there for like 30, 45 minutes getting unloaded and reloaded. I went in to get my paperwork, and he was still pulling forward and backing up and pulling forward and backing up. And look, there's no hate to the driver. It's hard to back a trailer up. But at the same time, whew, you know what I'm saying? Like, y'all are putting dangers, threats to human lives out here on the road. This ain't a Prius. This is an 80,000-pound vehicle.
Yeah. So this is happening in Canada too. And people are not trained well, and they're put on the roads, and people have been killed because of this. And I mean, the roads are terrible, terrible. Yesterday, there's a multicultural festival going on in Riverside Park. I was driving around Riverside Park. There's a woman who was sitting. Now, they've destroyed Highway 7 as well. At the end of Highway 7 on Victoria Road and Woodlawn Road, where the two intersect, they've reduced it down to 2 lanes with bike lanes and a center suicide lane. So if you're in the right lane or the left lane, going north or south or whatever it is, and you want to make a left, you go out of the main flow of traffic and then sit in the suicide lane to make a left or a right. So they've destroyed this. Whatever, they've done it. They've done this, and it's been this way for years, but people didn't want it then, and they want it even less now. So there's a big lineup to get up to the hill, and there's a woman sitting in the right lane just before the light as it reduces down, and she's got her indicator on, indicating left, like she's joining traffic, but she's sitting there. The car is parked. It looks parked, and she's got her indicator on. She was dropping somebody off, but she was in the middle of traffic. She was sitting there in the middle of traffic, in the middle of the lane. She wasn't pulled over or anything like that. Didn't have her indicator on, like she was sitting over. Didn't have 4-ways on or anything like that. It looked like she was trying to join traffic, sitting in the middle of the lane, and the lane was ending, so causing all sorts of traffic chaos in this highway. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. People get pissed off. So yeah, these things are, and half the time, it's difficult not to think that it's not being done on purpose. So, Kirk says the things are getting so ridiculous in Canada's justice system now that we are now considering punishment based on if it will deport the person instead of what's good for Canada and our society. Gardin Par Singh Bawa has 32 driving prohibition or suspensions from different drinking and driving violations, which include rear-ending a car and driving when he wasn't allowed. The Crown, for some reason, only asked for a 4-month consecutive jail sentence, and even alarmed the judge and Singh's lawyer, asking for a smaller sentence so he wouldn't be deported out of Canada. Sentence and deport. So prolific BC drunk driver could face deportation after dozens of driving bans over 30 years. So a driver who's racked up 32 prohibitions, as well as 16 24-hour driving bans, failed to convince a British Columbia judge he should get a lighter sentence than normal for drunk driving because more than 6 months in jail could get him deported to India. His lawyer argued for conditional sentence or no more jail time than he got in 2019, which was 5 months and 29 days behind bars. He noted that would allow Bawa to stay in Canada. Why is that the priority? Seems strange, right? Seems weird to have a two-tier justice system that first considers will dealing with this crime in the usual way result in this person being deported from Canada. That's the first consideration. And it doesn't have to do with justice. It doesn't have to do with did he do the crime or anything like that. No. Will this punishment make this person deported? Yes. Okay. Well, the punishment's off the table then. Crazy. 5 months and 29 days. Weird, right? Shannon, let's talk about our budgeting and money. Shannon says the natural resource minister doesn't know or won't say which sectors have lost the most jobs since last May. So I told him forestry, fishing, mining, quarrying, and oil and gas. And it's the backbone of Canada's economy. So it's weird that those sectors are shedding jobs. Here's CPC talking about that.
I've asked the minister a number of questions across all the sectors in natural resources, so he doesn't need to patronize me. Does he know which sectors lost the most jobs since May?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think that's a question for the Minister of Employment.
The honourable member.
I'll give him one more chance. Does he know which sectors lost the most jobs since May?
The honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure how that's relevant to the main estimates here.
The honourable member.
Well, it's relevant because it was forestry, fishing, mining, quarrying, and oil and gas workers in Canada who lost the most jobs of any sectors in the entire Canadian economy since May last year and over the past lost anti-development Liberal decade. I've asked the minister.
Yep, but the Liberals don't care. And it's interesting how when asked, do you know how many, he's the Minister of Forestry and so on and so forth, right? Do you know how many of these jobs have been lost? That's not my jurisdiction. That's somebody else's jurisdiction. Really? Wow. People are not even held accountable for their own jobs. What an incredible place to be. Here is Table Salt, and they say Brampton median real estate price January 2022, 1.3 million. Brampton median real estate price May 2025, $875,000. We just witnessed the largest evaporation of wealth from any community in the history of Canada. Sure, and this needs to go down another $500,000 and probably then another 200,000. So realistically, if whatever the average price in Brampton when I was growing up was certainly under $200,000 for a house, and like a house where you had 3 bedrooms and maybe 2 bathrooms, a finished or maybe half finished basement, maybe a garage, maybe no garage, but $200,000. A semi-detached or fully detached house should not be $1 million investment every time. That's not how real estate markets work. Look at everywhere else in the world. Honestly, Japan just rebuilds houses every 30 years. They tear down houses and then rebuild them. It's crazy, man. But watching this, Canada's been sold this idea, and indeed the government really likes this idea, that expensive real estate is like your nest egg. So you have this built-in retirement package when you sell your house. But I don't think that we actually get the value from that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we actually get the value from that. Joe Warmington's highlighting these Father's Day steaks deals from Australia. Weird. Joe says, why beef from Australia? Why is it $70 cheaper than Canadian beef? So David says this was Loblaws in Toronto today, no remortgaging required. So $20 for it's $21 a kilogram, so $20 for almost a kilogram of beef, and it's their strip loin steaks from Australia. So there you go, yum, right? I mean, what carbon impact? What are you talking about, right? Canadian beef is obviously way more environmentally impactful than Australian beef. Isn't that crazy? So, and recently there have been all sorts of threads talking about Costco beef. I think this is one of them. Oh no, this guy. There were people and have been people over the last few days sharing how much meat has increased. And so this is an outlier. It's very interesting. Here is another thing. I was in the grocery store the other day and I saw $8 strawberries. And I thought, isn't it the summertime? Isn't it strawberry cream pie season type deal? Like you get the angel cake and the strawberries and I'm allergic to strawberries, but, and cream and stuff, boom, right? Like that's a big dessert. $8, right? Food professor says when strawberries hit $6 a pound during what should be peak season is a sign that something isn't right. Consumers should expect to pay closer to $3.50 to $4.50 a pound right now. Consumers are right to question what's driving these costs. I know what's driving these costs. We are being screwed by our leadership. Let's talk about China very briefly. This almost went into the invasion part, but it's kind of different enough to talk about it on its own. This has a lot to do with BC, Dave Eby, and China's infiltration into every level of our government, I think, as well. They may be part and parcel of this whole reason our government is so ineffective. Harmon says, Dave Eby keeps talking about Team Canada, but keeps showing up with the CCP's farm team. While BC workers struggle, he's getting cozy with the Chinese consulate top's political allies. He's not standing with Canadian workers, he's standing with Beijing.